The rain had just stopped when I stepped onto the porch, my coat still damp at the shoulders. The box in my hands wasn't heavy, just a modest square wrapped in soft gold paper. No bow, no glitter. I held it with both palms like it was a fragile thing. Maybe it was. Noah opened the door, dressed in one of those polished, button-down shirts that looked like it had never been washed by hand. His eyes flicked to the box. "Oh, Mom, you brought something," he said, voice light, casual, a tone he'd adopted over the years like it was part of his professional vocabulary. Lily's laugh came before I could answer. It's probably one of her little homemade things. A plant? Some thrift store trinket? She leaned over from behind her brother, eyeing the package like a child waiting to guess a joke. Their spouses were already in the living room, glasses in hand, talking over one another. The fireplace was on, the wine was flowing, and the whole house smelled like expensive vanilla and rosemary. I forced a smile, brushing past them and stepping inside. "I thought I'd give you this before dinner." Lily cocked her head, playing gracious hostess. "Oh? For both of us?" "For both of you?" I said. My voice was even, quiet, not stiff, but practiced. I placed the box gently on the coffee table, right between the charcuterie board and a hardcover book titled The Art of Leadership. I watched Noah glance toward his wife, who raised an eyebrow and gave a little shrug like, "Just open it." They didn't even sit down. Noah pulled the ribbon loose, while Lily leaned over his shoulder, smirking. The moment the lid came off, I watched their expressions change. The smirk fell first. Then Noah's fingers stopped moving. Lily's eyes narrowed, her mouth slightly open. There was no laughter now. Not a sound from either of them as they stared into the box. Two pairs of wide, silent eyes, suddenly children again, staring into something they couldn't quite understand. And then I saw it happen. Something in Noah's face cracked, just a flicker, like a man who's just realized he's not the one holding the cards. Lily covered her mouth with one hand. "Is this real?" she whispered, her voice barely a thread. I didn't answer. I stepped back, folded my hands neatly in front of me, and looked at them both. The weight of 30 years sat on my shoulders. Years they never saw. Years they never asked about. "You laughed," I said softly. Noah finally looked up. "Mom? Where did you—" I shook my head, just once. "You laughed." They didn't move. They couldn't. Still staring at what was inside the box, as if it might disappear if they blinked. Their knees buckled almost in unison. Lily dropped to the rug first. Noah followed. And in that moment, it wasn't the size of the box that mattered. It never was. It was everything they didn't know about me. Everything they never bothered to learn. Everything that was finally too heavy to be hidden in a small gold box. There's a funny thing about motherhood. People talk about it like it's some universal miracle, this natural, joyful state of giving. But what they don't mention is how invisible it makes you, how you slowly shrink, bit by bit, until you're just a shadow moving behind other people's dreams. When Noah was born, I was 24. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment where the wallpaper peeled at the corners and the heating clicked so loudly at night it sounded like it was coughing. My husband, Daniel, was still figuring out who he was. I, on the other hand, had no time for self-discovery. I had diapers to change and rent to pay. Then Lily came along. And just like that, the little fragments of myself I hadn't yet buried got boxed up with my old piano books and sketch pads and shoved to the back of the closet. Daniel left when Lily was 3. He said he needed space. I gave it to him. And when the space swallowed him whole, I didn't follow. I worked 2 jobs then, cleaner by day, waitress by night. I missed school recitals. I missed sleep. I missed meals. There were nights I fell asleep on the bus home and woke up 2 stops past my apartment. Nights when I stared at the moon through the kitchen window and wondered if she ever got tired of being looked at but never seen. But I kept going. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't bear to let them down. I wanted them to feel what I never had. Security. The certainty that someone was always there, even when they never asked, even when they never thanked me, even when they grew up and began reshaping the stories of their childhood, leaving my name out like I'd just been part of the furniture. By the time Noah got his first internship, he was already embarrassed by me. He didn't say it out loud, not then, but he stopped introducing me to his colleagues. When I dropped him off at the company office one afternoon, he asked me to stay in the car. I don't want to make it weird," he said. I remember gripping the steering wheel and nodding. Of course, Lily was subtler. Her jabs came wrapped in compliments. "You always try so hard, Mom. Even if it's not, like, Pinterest perfect, it's sweet." Translation: my effort was noted, but not enough to display. They had no idea I skipped buying groceries some weeks so they could attend summer camp, that I stitched my own work uniforms when I couldn't afford new ones, that I cried over bills with a calculator in one hand and overdue notices in the other. They only saw what they wanted to see: the tired, plain, middle-aged woman who gave too many hugs and brought weird little homemade things to birthdays. I never told them about the woman I used to be, the one who once played Chopin from memory, the one who wanted to study architecture, the one who drew blueprints of dream houses and taped them to her bedroom wall. That woman disappeared long ago, quietly, without protest. And still, I loved them more than breath itself. But love, I've learned, is not supposed to erase you. It didn't happen all at once. That's how distance grows between people you love. It doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps in like fog. One minute, you're having dinner together. The next, you're sitting in silence, checking your phone under the table, wondering when it became a chore to be around each other. The first time I noticed the change, Noah had just gotten promoted. His wife, Rachel, organized a little gathering. A few co-workers, catered appetizers, even one of those fancy balloon garlands in shades of navy and silver. She invited me, of course. But I wasn't really invited, not in the way that mattered. I showed up wearing a navy blouse and black slacks, clothes I'd ironed the night before. I brought a bottle of red wine and a small gift, a gold pen engraved with his initials. I'd saved for weeks. When I handed it to him, he smiled thinly. "Thanks, Mum," he said, then turned to his friend. "My mum's really into thoughtful gifts," he added, the way someone might say, "She still collects stamps." He set the pen aside, never took it out of the box. Later, I watched as Rachel's boss handed him a sleek fountain pen from a designer brand. It came in a box the size of a jewelry case. Noah's eyes lit up. He said, "Now that's something." That night, I sat in the back of the Uber, holding my coat tightly around me, as if it might guard my chest from the slow ache curling there. I told myself not to take it personally, that it was just a moment, a slip. But moments became patterns. With Lily, it was the wedding. The dress fitting, to be exact. She had chosen a boutique downtown, the kind that offers champagne and pastel macarons on glass trays. Her bridesmaids were all there, friends from college and work. They were beautiful, bubbly, sharp-tongued women who wore confidence like perfume. I stood quietly near the mirror, watching Lily twirl in a white lace gown, her face radiant. Then one of her friends whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "She looks amazing. You'd never guess her mum was, you know." Lily didn't correct her. She didn't say anything at all. She just smiled. I stood there, still, like part of the scenery, like one of those mannequins in the window, stiff and mute, watching the world rush past. Afterward, as we sat in the parking lot, I reached into my bag and pulled out a necklace, a delicate strand of pearls that had belonged to my mother. I had worn them on my wedding day. "I was thinking you might want to wear this," I said, holding them out. Lily blinked at them, then gave a soft, awkward smile. "Oh, Mom, they're sweet, but they don't really match my vibe, you know?" I nodded, sliding them back into the box. It wasn't just the gifts they didn't want, it was me. Not the woman who raised them, soothed their nightmares, made costumes by hand, or taught them how to ride a bike in the empty church parking lot. They wanted the mother who didn't exist, the one who was elegant, polished, understated, the kind who stayed quiet in the background, but made perfect deviled eggs and signed cards with "Love, Mom" in looping calligraphy, the kind who knew her place. That's when I realized love given freely is often mistaken for obligation, and presence, when expected, becomes invisible. So I stopped asking for affection. I stopped bringing them things unless I was invited to. I stopped reaching first, and slowly they stopped reaching at all. It was Noah's 35th birthday, and they were going all out. Lily had offered to host at her new house, her forever home, as she called it, nestled in one of those neighborhoods where every lawn looks airbrushed and the doorbells connect to a phone app. She had just finished redecorating, so it wasn't just a party, it was a show. "Everyone's coming," she said over the phone. Rachel's family, Noah's boss, a couple of his friends from business school. There was a pause. "You'll come, right?" I almost smiled, as if she thought I might forget. "I'll be there," I said. "Would you like me to bring anything?" "No, it's fine. Just maybe wear something nice, something classic." "Something that won't embarrass you," I thought, but didn't say. I arrived 5 minutes early, holding a carefully wrapped gift. A vintage watch I'd restored myself, replacing the leather band and polishing the glass. It wasn't new, but it was real, like me. The door was already open, laughter spilling out into the driveway. Inside, the house glowed. Gold accents, flickering candles, linen napkins folded like lotus flowers. Lily had done well. Noah stood near the bar, surrounded by people who talked with one hand in their pockets and the other wrapped around a wine glass. I moved toward him with a quiet, "Happy birthday," holding the box out gently. He glanced at it, smiled automatically, and tucked it under the drink cart. "Thanks, Mum. You always bring something thoughtful." That word again. Thoughtful. A synonym for quaint, for outdated. Dinner was buffet style, except for the special table which had place cards. I looked for mine. There wasn't one. "Mum," Lily said brightly, gesturing toward the kitchen island. "We set up a spot for you over here. It's easier, less crowded. You'll be more comfortable." I sat at a bar stool facing a wall. The others dined in the chandelier-lit dining room, their voices rising in polite laughter, while I listened to the dishwasher hum behind me. No one noticed I wasn't there. Not until Rachel's aunt, an older woman with sharp eyes and a blunt tongue, leaned over and asked, "So dear, are you one of the caterers?" Lily heard. She laughed, not cruelly, not intentionally, but not with any instinct to correct either. Just enough to let the question hang in the air. I smiled. "No, just the woman who paid for half this house," I said quietly, and excused myself. I sat in my car for a long time that night. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I didn't even drive home right away. I just stared at the dashboard, feeling something I couldn't quite name settle into my chest. It wasn't pain. It was clarity. For years, I thought their distance was my fault, that I hadn't given enough, that I should have tried harder to stay relevant, stay needed. But sitting alone in my car, I realized something sharp and certain. They hadn't grown apart from me. They had outgrown their gratitude. The letter arrived on a Wednesday morning, tucked between grocery store flyers and a coupon booklet I'd never use. I almost didn't open it. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, with my name handwritten in neat, delicate script. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It belonged to Eleanor, my old employer. She had passed 2 months ago, quietly, in her sleep. 86 years old, no children, no siblings. I'd worked for her for nearly 9 years. Not as a maid, not exactly. She'd always refused to call me that. "You're my companion, my anchor," she'd said. "You keep this house alive." I watered her roses, cooked her meals, read her poetry when her eyesight began to fade. We listened to Chopin together, folded linens together, held silence together when the nights grew long and lonely. She paid me well, but never extravagantly. I never expected more. Inside the envelope was a letter, folded around something heavier. "To Margaret," it began, "for the years you gave me, not as an employee, but as the only person in my life who ever stayed. You gave me comfort when I had no one. You gave me laughter when I thought I had forgotten how. And so I give this to you, not out of pity, but out of admiration." I unfolded the paper further. A check. At first, I thought I read it wrong. There were too many zeros. $8 million. I stared at it for a long time. Then I reread the letter, word by word, letting her voice echo in my head. $8 million. She had left me everything. The estate, the accounts, the investments, everything. The lawyer confirmed it the next day. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a technicality. I was the sole beneficiary. I remember walking home in a daze, the city around me blurred like watercolor. I could have taken a cab, but I wanted the walk. I needed the ground beneath my feet to remind me I was still real. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't splurge or buy champagne. I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of tea, the check resting quietly beside a half-eaten piece of toast. What would Noah say if he knew? What would Lily ask for? I already knew the answer. I knew the questions before they would ask them. "Can we look at new houses? Could you help us start a college fund for the kids? Mum, we just need a little cushion while we're renovating." They would smile. They would be grateful. Until the money became routine. Until I became invisible again. So I didn't tell them. Not yet. Instead, I hired a financial advisor, secured the trust documents, transferred the inheritance into several diversified AC. Then I wrote a letter of my own. 2, actually. One for Noah, one for Lily. Not to punish them, but to tell the truth. And the truth was simple. Love without respect is a one-way transaction. I had spent a lifetime overdrafting that account. This time I was keeping the balance in my name. The call came one Sunday afternoon. I was in the garden, pulling weeds between the rose bushes Eleanor had once helped me plant. The sky was soft with spring, the kind of weather that made you believe in second chances. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. Lily. "Hey, Mom," she said, too brightly. "We were just talking about you." We. She meant her and Noah. That was always how it went. 2 voices in one mouth, like I was being double-teamed even when I didn't know it. "Oh?" I said, brushing soil off my gloves. "Yeah, we've been thinking. It's really not good for you to be living alone anymore. I mean, with your health." "My health is fine." "Well, you're not getting younger, and we were thinking, maybe it's time you moved into a senior community." There was a pause, like she was giving me a moment to feel grateful. I didn't speak. I let the silence stretch like a bridge over a canyon. I mean, she continued, her voice lowering to a faux concerned tone. It'd be safer. You'd have company. And there's one near us with good reviews. Noah already called for availability. It's affordable too, especially if you take one of the work-share units. Work-share? I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Yeah, you could do light duties. You know, help in the kitchen, maybe run the laundry room. It's not hard stuff. Good for staying active. I stood there, the phone hot against my ear, my knuckles white around the spade. They wanted me to scrub dishes in a retirement facility to earn my keep, after 3 decades of building their futures with my bare hands. That sounds a lot like a job, I said flatly. Come on, Mom. You've never minded working, and you said yourself that you don't want to be a burden. This way, you're still independent. Independent. That word. Twisted and reused until it no longer meant dignity. It meant disposability. And, Lily added, almost as an afterthought, if you move into the program this spring, they'll waive your first 2 months of rent. That's a great deal, right? It took everything in me not to laugh or scream. Instead, I said, thank you for thinking of me. I'll consider it. And I hung up. Later that week, I got another call, this time from Noah. He didn't beat around the bush. Look, he said, we know money's tight for you right now, and we've got another baby on the way. We just need everyone to contribute more, and you're still able-bodied. His words, contribute more, stung deeper than he knew. They'd forgotten the unpaid mortgage I covered, the tuition I scraped together for summer classes, the fact that every room they now called theirs had once been funded by my sleepless nights and overdrawn accounts. What exactly do you expect from me? I asked, though I already knew. Nothing crazy, he said. Just maybe a part-time job, something that pays. You could look into caregiving again. You used to be good at that, remember? Caregiving. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent a lifetime giving care. And now, when it was their turn to return even a fraction of it, they outsourced me. They wanted my effort, but not my presence. My labor, but not my needs. My loyalty, but not my humanity. That night, I made tea. I sat at the same table I'd once fed them at, where I had bandaged skinned knees and cooled fevers and cut the crusts off their sandwiches. And I opened the small black velvet box I'd been saving. Inside was a gold key, not to my apartment, to something far more valuable, the key to their reckoning. I didn't sleep the night after that call, not from sadness, not even anger. It was something colder, clearer, like glass. I sat in bed with a notebook, a pen, and a legal folder I hadn't touched since the inheritance cleared. I flipped through each page like I was reading someone else's life. Maybe I was. Because the woman who first received those documents had been unsure of what to do next. But now she knew exactly what she was going to do. I went to the bank that Monday. The manager greeted me with a smile. He always did. They knew me there now. Not as that older woman with the quiet voice, but as Margaret Lane, primary holder of an 8-figure trust. I didn't dress flashy. No heels, no designer bags. Just clean lines, flat shoes, and a scarf Eleanor had given me years ago. Simple, underestimated, my favorite disguise. I'd like to access my deposit box, I said. Inside, I took what I needed. The original trust statement, the deed to my new home, and a notarized check, already written, already signed, for an amount that could pay off both my children's mortgages and still leave enough to buy 3 Teslas. But that wasn't what they were getting. Not anymore. I went straight from the bank to the boutique gift store Eleanor used to love. A small place with velvet-lined counters and glass cases full of items people usually walk past because they think they can't afford them. I didn't ask for help. I knew exactly what I wanted. A box. No bigger than my palm, matte gold, no bow. Just a single ivory ribbon, thin, soft, almost translucent. It looked like nothing. It looked like everything. Later that night, I took out 2 sheets of paper and began to write. One for Noah, one for Lily. Not handwritten, no frills, just clean and typed. My words were precise, not cruel, but sharp enough to land where they needed to. This is not a gift. It is a reminder of everything you chose not to see, and everything I finally chose to stop giving. Each letter was folded neatly and placed inside the box, underneath the items that would stop them cold. A photocopy of the trust, a scan of the $8 million check, and the key to a vault that no longer had their names on it. Then I closed the box, tied the ribbon, and smiled. I didn't drop it off with fanfare. No speeches, no guilt trips, no trembling hands. I simply told Lily I'd be stopping by for dinner the following Sunday and that I had something small I wanted to give them. No need to go overboard, she said breezily. Just bring yourself. Bring myself. As if I hadn't been doing that for decades. As if that had ever been enough. When Sunday arrived, I dressed like I always did. Nothing extravagant. A wool coat, slacks, my softest flats. I held the box in both hands, as though I were afraid it might break. But it wasn't the box that was fragile. It was the illusion. They welcomed me in with polite smiles, halfway through setting the table. Lily's kids ran by without a glance in my direction. Noah was already nursing a beer, eyes on a football game humming in the background. No one offered to take my coat. No one asked how I was feeling. They assumed they knew, that I was the same woman as always, the one who would clean up afterward without being asked, the one who'd hand over a gas card or an envelope of cash without question, the one who'd keep showing up, just grateful to be invited. Not today. I brought something, I said, setting the box gently in the center of the table. Lily glanced at it, then at me, lips curling upward. That's adorable, Mom. Is it one of your, what do you call them? Memory boxes? Noah laughed under his breath. She's still into that sentimental stuff. Their spouses exchanged knowing glances. My grandchildren barely looked up from their tablets. It's just something small, I said. And it was. In size. In weight. It was everything. Should we open it now? Lily asked. If you'd like. They didn't wait. Noah untied the ribbon. Lily lifted the lid. The laughter faded so quickly, it was as if it had never been there. Her fingers froze over the contents. Noah leaned forward, eyebrows slowly lifting as realization settled over his face like a heavy curtain. What is this? He murmured. Lily's lips parted, her eyes flicking from the documents to me, then back again. The trust scan, the copy of the check, the vault key, the letters. Noah picked his up with a trembling hand. Lily didn't move. Her face had drained of color. Rachel stood behind Noah, peeking over his shoulder. Is this a joke? No one answered her. Noah's knees buckled slightly as he lowered himself into a chair. Lily sat, wordless. And in that silence, I felt something inside me shift. Not vengeance, not bitterness. Freedom. Noah was the first to speak. This can't be real. His voice cracked like glass under a boot. Where would you even get this kind of money? Lily's hands were trembling. Mom, what is this? Why wouldn't you tell us? Rachel looked from one to the other, half spooked, half skeptical. Wait, is this yours? Like, your name is on this? Yes, I said, my voice steady. All of it is mine. Noah shook his head, like that single act of denial could reverse reality. You've been living in that old apartment for years. You bring coupons to brunch. Lily's voice sharpened. You lied to us? I protected myself. I corrected. There's a difference. You had all this, Lily said, voice rising, and you watched us struggle. You let me think I had to crowdfund preschool for my daughter while you sat on $8 million. You didn't struggle, I said. You asked me for money to upgrade your kitchen backsplash. Noah wanted help with landscaping and a second SUV. Rachel's mouth opened, closed. She turned away. And even if you had been struggling, I added, you would have called me not because you loved me, but because you saw me as useful. That's all I've been to you. A walking checkbook, a forever nanny, an extra line in your household budget. That's not fair, Noah snapped. I raised my eyebrows. No? Then tell me, when was the last time either of you called me just to talk? No favors, no errands, no passive-aggressive questions about whether I'd thought about selling the piano or moving in with other ladies my age. They were quiet. You only wanted me around when I was pouring myself into your lives. When I stopped giving, you stopped calling. And when I lost the one job you thought made me useful, you tried to ship me off to a senior center to clean someone else's dishes. Lily's face turned red. That was Noah's idea. Don't, I said coldly. Don't start blaming each other. You were both in on it. Noah looked at me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Shame, maybe, or panic. You're our mother, he said. You don't just walk away. That's not how family works. I leaned in slightly. You're right. That's not how family works. And yet, that's exactly how you treated me. He opened his mouth again, but I cut him off. When Dad left, I stayed. When bills piled up, I worked. When you cried, I was there. I gave up every dream I ever had to make sure you could have yours. And now? You want to know what hurts the most? It's not the ingratitude. I've learned to expect that. It's the disbelief. The way you looked at that box like it couldn't possibly belong to me. Like someone like me could never have something of value. Rachel muttered, That's not what we meant. But it's what you believed, I said. And belief shows more than words ever will. Lily wiped at her eyes. So what happens now? I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see my daughter. I saw a woman who had grown into someone I couldn't recognize. Now? I said. Now we're done. Noah stood abruptly, knocking the chair back. You can't just cut us off. I already have. You're being cruel, Lily said, voice trembling. No, I said softly. Cruel would have been keeping you in my life while knowing exactly what you think of me. This? I gestured to the box. This is honesty. The room had gone still, except for the soft clink of the key Noah had dropped on the floor. It lay there between us, useless now. No longer a symbol of promise, but of everything he wouldn't have. Lily was crying, but I couldn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. Not after the cold dinners, the dismissal, the quiet erasure of everything I'd been to them. I had mourned them already, long before they'd realized they were losing me. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the 2 envelopes I'd brought. These are for you, I said, setting them on the edge of the table. They're copies of everything you just saw. You can keep them, frame them, burn them. It's up to you. Rachel's voice cracked. Are you seriously cutting your own children out of your life? No, I said quietly. I'm finally setting them down. They looked at me like I'd slapped them. But this wasn't violence. This was relief. For years I had lived in a kind of quiet debt. One where I paid in patience, in forgiveness, in second chances they never once asked for but always expected. And today, the balance was zero. I walked to the door, my shoes silent on their polished floors. No one followed, not even Lily. The same woman who used to scream in the middle of the night because the wind knocked on her window, and only my voice could settle her back to sleep. The little girl who once clung to my skirt in public, like I was the only anchor she had in a spinning world. Now she just sat there, surrounded by everything money could buy, and none of what love should have built. The air outside was brisk but clean, the kind of chill that made you stand a little straighter. I walked to my car with a calm so deep it almost startled me. It was the calm of someone who had been carrying a burning weight and finally set it down. When I got in and closed the door, I didn't cry. I didn't need to. I just sat in the stillness for a moment, the kind that used to scare me but now felt like peace. Then I started the engine, pulled away from the curb, and didn't look back. I moved out of my apartment a month later, not because I had to. I could have stayed, and no one would have known. But I didn't want to live in a place where every corner carried the sound of waiting for someone to call, to visit, to remember, waiting for the knock that never came. I bought a house in a lakeside town an hour away, not the flashiest zip code, not where Noah or Lily lived. But that was the point. It had tall windows, white curtains that danced when the breeze came through. A kitchen with old tile, charming and stubborn. A room with perfect light for painting. And a garden, untamed, but ready. The realtor blinked when I paid in full, no loan. "You sure about this one?" he asked. "I've never been more sure about anything," I said. He smiled, probably thinking I was someone's quiet widow spending her husband's pension. Let him think what he wanted. Everyone always had. I filled the rooms, slowly. A velvet chair for reading. A second-hand piano, tuned to perfection. Books that I used to check out and return too soon because I never had time to finish them. Time. That was the greatest luxury I'd bought. I started painting again. The brush felt foreign in my hand at first, like it belonged to someone younger, someone forgotten. But muscle remembers what the mind tries to bury. The first thing I painted was a house by the water, not mine, but something softer, dreamlike. A place I used to imagine living in when I was a girl, before dishes and daycare and broken promises became my daily prayers. Each stroke was quiet, patient, certain. There was no one to impress, no one to please, no one to shame me if it wasn't Pinterest perfect. There was only me, and that was enough. People in the town were kind in that small town, curious but polite way. They didn't ask about children. They didn't ask what I used to do. They only asked what I liked to do now, and I told them. I paint, I play piano, I garden, I read, I drink coffee on my porch and watch the light change. Simple. They nodded, smiled, sometimes stayed for coffee. No one asked for money. No one asked for more. It felt strange at first, not being needed. But slowly, I realized it wasn't loneliness, it was peace. It started with a bouquet. Bright, expensive flowers, lilies and orchids wrapped in glossy white paper, left at my gate by the concierge with a note clipped to the ribbon. Thinking of you? Hope you're well. Love, Noah. I didn't bring them inside. I walked them to the trash can with steady hands, lifted the lid, and let them drop without hesitation. The paper crinkled. The lilies folded like they knew they weren't welcome here. I snapped a photo, petals crushed, the card torn in half, and sent it to the concierge with a short message. Please return this photo to the sender. No further deliveries are to be accepted from this name. I never received another bouquet again. But he didn't stop. A week later, he started showing up. First at the end of the street, parked in a car too new, too shiny for this town. Then on the sidewalk, outside the local grocery store. Then just beyond my garden gate, hands stuffed in his coat, like he was just a boy waiting for permission to come home. He never rang the bell. He just stood there, rain or sun, always in the same spot, always looking. The neighbors noticed. They asked if I was okay, if I needed them to talk to him. I told them he wasn't dangerous, just someone who had lost the ability to hear the word no. One afternoon, I stepped into the car with my new driver, a quiet woman named Elise, and saw him again, standing on the sidewalk in the same slouched pose. When we pulled out, he stepped forward. He mouthed something through the window. "Mom, please." I didn't roll it down. I didn't wave. I didn't even blink. Elise drove through the gate and into the garage, and I let the silence wrap around me like armor. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. And that was what terrified him. He finally broke his silence on a Sunday afternoon. I had just returned from the local bookshop, my newest indulgence, a novel I never had time to read when time belonged to someone else. As I turned the corner into my garden path, there he was again. But this time, he stepped in front of the gate before Elise could pull away. She looked at me in the rearview mirror, uncertain. "It's fine," I said, unbuckling. "I'll handle it." Noah looked thinner, paler. His eyes carried that exhausted, stretched look, like someone who hadn't been sleeping, but still hadn't started waking up either. "Mum," he said, his voice barely a breath. "Please, just 5 minutes." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I opened the gate. We sat on the garden bench I'd painted myself, the one tucked beneath the jasmine vine. He stared at the wildflowers I'd planted in mismatched rows, as if they might speak first. "I messed up," he said finally. I didn't nod. I didn't soften. I didn't know how far we'd gone, how far we'd pushed you. I just thought... He faltered, then forced the words out. "I thought you'd always be there." "That was the problem," I said quietly. He swallowed hard. "Lily's not doing great either. She cried for days. We didn't think you meant it when you said you were done." "You didn't think," I said. Period. He looked up, wounded. I was stressed. Rachel was pregnant. We had bills, work. "You had every advantage I never did. I handed them to you. And all I asked in return was to be treated like a human being, not like an obligation. Or worse, an asset." The wind stirred the leaves above us. He opened his mouth, but I kept going. "Do you know when I realized I didn't owe you anything anymore?" He didn't answer. "It wasn't the birthday dinner, or the way you ignored my letters. It wasn't even when you both tried to tuck me away in a facility like a piece of old furniture." I turned to him, my eyes steady, calm. "It was when you looked at that gift box like it couldn't possibly contain anything of value, because it came from me." His face twisted, grief, guilt, confusion all colliding behind his eyes. "You looked at me," I said, and saw smallness. And I finally realized, after everything I'd given, that I didn't want to spend whatever life I had left begging to be seen by people who would never really look. Silence. Just the soft creak of the wooden bench beneath us. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, fingers knotted. "I don't know how to fix this." "You can't," I said, "because it's not broken anymore." He looked up, startled. "It's finished." He stood, slowly. "So that's it? I'm just... gone?" "You're free," I said. "And so am I." As he walked away, I didn't call out to him. I didn't offer comfort or leave the door open. I just sat beneath the jasmine, watching the last sunlight fall between the petals, letting go of the version of motherhood I'd been chained to for too long. I hadn't abandoned my children. I had simply stepped out of a role they refused to retire me from. And now, I was just Margaret. And that was enough. There's a kind of silence that used to terrify me. The silence of an unanswered call. The silence of waiting in a room you weren't invited into. The silence of being talked around instead of spoken to. But this new silence? This was something else. It came in the soft rustle of my morning paper, untouched by sticky fingers or urgent requests. It came in the gentle scrape of a ceramic mug on wood as I sipped my coffee alone, and liked it that way. It came in the piano notes I played just for me, sometimes wrong, sometimes raw, but always mine. It was the silence of peace. My days no longer had purpose in the way they used to, not tethered to someone else's deadline, not wound tight around someone else's approval. I read long books slowly. I painted things that didn't need to be hung. I spoke to strangers and didn't apologize for having no one waiting at home. Sometimes I got curious looks in the cafe when I sat alone, laughing softly at something I'd read. People wondered, I'm sure, who I was. An elegant older woman in worn linen, eyes like she'd seen fire and walked through it without flinching. Once, a young woman at the bookstore leaned over and said, "I hope I grow into someone like you." I smiled. "I didn't grow into her," I said. "I returned to her." She blinked, unsure what that meant. But I did. The house became my sanctuary, not a mansion, not a villa dripping with proof of wealth, just enough. A fireplace that crackled like memory. A sunroom where the light slanted just right across my sketchpad. A kitchen that smelled like cinnamon more often than not. And the garden. Oh, the garden. Noah and Lily never saw this one. It wasn't trimmed or symmetrical. It didn't win awards or fit Pinterest boards. It grew on its own terms, just like me. Lavender that leaned wherever it pleased. Tomatoes that climbed the wrong fences. Roses that refused to bloom on schedule. Wild, unruly, alive. Sometimes I sat among them with a cup of tea and wondered if anyone ever truly knew who I was. And then I'd remember. I do. And for the first time in decades, that was enough. Sometimes people still ask if I regret it. Not the money, not the house, not the silence that followed my walking away, but the years, the giving, the mothering. They tilt their heads with that careful sympathy, trying to understand a story that doesn't end with hugs and reconciliations. Do you regret raising them? After everything? For a while, I didn't know how to answer. There were nights when I'd roll the memory of their childhoods over in my hands like a stone, trying to smooth its edges. I'd think about the scraped knees I bandaged, the tears I kissed away, the birthdays I made magical with nothing but cake mix and love, and I'd wonder if it was all for nothing. But here's the truth. I don't regret loving them. I regret losing myself while doing it. There is a kind of kindness that people like me are taught too well. The kind that folds itself small so others can stretch. The kind that never says no. The kind that clings to sacrifice like it's holy. But kindness without boundaries isn't noble. It's self-erasure. And I had spent too many years walking through fire for people who held the matches. Eleanor once told me, "The second half of your life is the one you live for you." I didn't understand that then. I thought my role was already written, my lines memorized, my exit cue decades away. But I was wrong. The curtain had lifted on a second act I never saw coming. A life where no one called me Mom just to ask for something. Where my name wasn't followed by, "Can you help with," or "We need." Where I didn't shrink, where I didn't apologize for breathing in space, for taking up a room with nothing but myself. Now I rise with the sun and don't check my phone. No guilt waits in my inbox. No lists I didn't write. No weight that doesn't belong to me. I drink my coffee slowly. I paint slowly. I live slowly. Not because time is running out, but because I finally know that it's mine. And if my children ever wonder what they meant to me, they can look back on the houses they live in, the education they received, the childhoods without hunger or chaos. They can open the photo albums, still on their shelves. They can replay every voicemail they never returned. They won't find hate there. But they won't find me either. Not anymore. Some stories don't end with reunions. Some mothers don't get thank yous. Some women don't wait to be understood. They choose, at last, to be free. And as for me, I was never a villain. I was never a saint. I was just a woman. And for the first time in my life, I finally lived like one.